Now I'm going to come to plan quantities, and the next two areas really work to get together, the plan quantities as well as estimating. And when we talk about estimating, we'll go into a lot of detail about estimating. But plan quantities, we originally designed this many years ago to accept Excel spreadsheets or accept data from digitizers. So if you had a set of plans, you had a digitizer and you're doing a takeoff, that information usually is dumped into an Excel type sheet that has some type of variable that you set up. You said, okay, well, I'm now taking off walls, so I'm going to call this WAL or WALL for walls, and it's going to give me some quantity. Well, that's what this was designed for. So you would have some type of code here, let's say WALLS for walls, and then you would put in some type of quantity here. I have 200 lineal feet, so I'll select lineal feet here. So this pop-up units, these are the units that you've set up in your company setup area, and then these are the variables. Now we have 5 columns here. If you notice, we have column A is a code. That's the variable that you want to use, and column B is a quantity. Well, the other fields, field C can be either a code or a quantity, meaning that you can type in another, maybe this is H walls, and that stands for half walls or something. So you can have a different code and then its quantity, and a different code and its quantity, or you can simply use all three of these, all these for, okay, well, this is 400 lineal feet there, 300 lineal feet there, and 100 lineal feet there, and 50 lineal feet there, and it's going to add all those up. So for this variable. So when you use this variable, it's going to, and you have values all the way across, it's going to add all those values together for walls. If you put in if either in the code or in either one of these places some other variable, some other alphanumeric alpha item, everything has to start with a letter. So it is alphanumeric, these codes, but you have to start with a letter. You can't go 1 walls and 2 walls. You have to go walls 1, walls 2 if you want 2 different variables. But as soon as you put a variable in here, an alpha character, then it knows it's just going to take what's next to it. So if you use this variable in your quantity calculation in estimating, it's going to use the value next to it. If there are any other variables in that line, in that row, if they're not, then it's going to take the total of that row. So there's some intelligence there on different ways of how do you use that. And again, you can say that this is part of that area, and if you're using locations, you can say, okay, this is part of location 1, and so forth. So you have the way to link this variable to a particular area and or location. So if you had multiple locations or multiple areas, you can still use the same variable, walls, and let's say if this was in location 1 and now this will be in location 2, you can still have walls as you can still use the same variable because you're splitting it up in 2 locations. The problem is you obviously confuse the system if you had 2 records and you had walls, and let's say 500 there. It won't know what it should use. Actually, it'll just default to whatever the first one you entered. So it would go to it'll do 1000, and it's going to ignore the 500. So again, usually if you're going to use these custom variables, as we call, you would actually set them up as a template so you don't have to do what I'm doing here of typing all this information in. So, and you might be asking, okay, well, what do we actually use this stuff for? And again, this is going to link to your estimating. So in theory, the process goes, you may have a template of all your planned quantities, you bring that in. Then you have a template of your scope, you bring that in. And in theory, if you really have everything straightened up, you just simply fill in your planned quantities of what the quantities of the project that you're working on. You simply fill in all these quantities, go to your estimate, click recalc, and you're done. Technically your estimate is done. Now, the reality of it is, scopes changes and things of that nature, but that's in theory what could or should happen with this. The other thing about custom variables, this area, is we are working on being able to import BIM, which is the Building Information Management protocols, I guess you want to call, in CAD drawings now. So if you have a actual CAD drawing of your project and it supports BIM, you can actually import that information. There is some consistency issues there with BIM because there are several different flavors of BIM that's out there. But that's essentially the same thing, in which you're gleaning off of the CAD drawing these codes or descriptions of what these objects are and some type of quantitative element of those descriptions. And depending on how those BIM objects are designed, they could be, square footage. You have a BIM object of carpet, and it's going to now give you the square yards of carpet that are being used. Or here's a BIM object of a steel beam, and here's the tonnage or the lineal footage of that steel beam. So that's still kind of down the line as far as some of the consistencies that need to be still developed in the AIA and the AGC, and some other organizations are trying to get more standardizations there. But just so you know, we'll be able to handle it when it becomes a little bit more standardized. It's getting there, but it needs a little bit more. So we also have some filtering here, so we can filter by areas. We also can filter by codes. So if we just want to work on all the square footages in all the different areas, we can just simply select SF and I'll filter it down so we only see those codes across all the areas. So this is pretty versatile, and it's extremely powerful when it comes to building a connectivity and intelligence between a takeoff sheet that you would have and your estimate. The other area that we have here are what we call NUM variables, and they're still tied to locations areas and locations, or subjobs and locations. But here in the company setup, we predefine what they are, and we have 25 of them. So there's 25 different variables that we can use. So this is kind of a fixed thing. So if you do a type of project, and this is primarily with subcontractors possibly, in which you're a very specific specialty contractor and you know what things you take off all the time. For example, maybe I'm a granite guy that just simply deals with granite countertops. That's all I do. So all I want to know is what area of the house I'm in, what location, east, west, wall, how many of these that I need, the length and the width, and it's going to then tell me what the area square footage is. And you actually, so let's say if this is 10 by 2, we should, oh, it didn't do it. I may not have it set up. I may not have the formula there. But you can build any of these variable columns. You can build your own formulas over in the company setups area. So you can say, okay, num1 times num2 times num3 equals, num4, which is the square footage of it. So this is good if you're in an industry or doing something in which you only will have, in this case, up no more than 25 different variables for it. And the last thing is just simply a quantity selection. So we have where we attach quantities to each of these project details, but sometimes you don't use project details or subjobs or locations or anything like that. But you still want to do a planned quantity takeoff. Well, here you can select what takeoff you want to use and then just simply import the quantity template. So that becomes very very simple too if you want just some really basic information on it. One other thing with the planned quantities, we talk about values, quantities, 200, but these could also be on and off switches. For example, it could be something like power. Is there power or not? And 1 could mean yes, there is power at the site, or 0 means no, there isn't power at the site. And that then can turn on or off. If you don't have power on the site, then you have to get a generator out there to give power for it. If you do have power, then you don't have to do anything with that. So again, you can build these kind of yes or no answers based on ones or zeros to turn off or on estimating line items.